Good afternoon. My name is Jacob Rossi. I build products at Oculus that we think are going to bring in the next generation of the web, WebXR. This is a web that's powered by VR and AR technology. So today, I want to talk about how we're using VR technology on Facebook, outside and inside of headsets, and how we're building open source frameworks for developers to get started with React 360. We're thinking about how to tie the phone experiences in with the VR experiences and bridge the gap between those two. And then we're going to glimpse into the future and the ways that Oculus are helping innovate in this space. Oculus is a platform that we build for a more immersive experience. And we think about how to extract technology that we build for VR and use it in other places like Facebook. One of the easiest and earliest examples of that is 360 photos. 360 photos have existed for a long time, and they're easier than ever to create. With better cameras, better user experiences, better AI stitching algorithms, basically any phone out there today can create a 360 photo and share it on Facebook. For the next level of experience, there's also 360 video. 360 video is more sophisticated to create. You might need a 360 camera, but it creates an experience and takes you to an event in a way that 2D video just can't. If you're at a concert, you can see everybody dancing around you. If you're at a speech, you see the standing ovation, and you see it from every point of view. You can look around. And so we introduced a new format last year to Facebook called 3D photos. 3D photos take ordinary flat photos and add depth and perspective, allowing you to use your phone's motion sensor to look around and have the photo come to life. How do 3D photos work? 3D photos work using dual lens cameras like those found on the iPhone. Those lenses are set to two different focal lengths. You have one lens at a near focal length and one at a far focal length. Most commonly, you might have experienced this with portrait photos, right? Where the subject that's close to you is in focus, and the subject that's far away from you has a high level of blur or bokeh. The cool thing about this is that these dual lens cameras actually retain the data from both the lenses. They do this so that you can edit the portrait photo after the fact. So here's the same photo being adjusted with different levels of background blur. Facebook's able to actually take the data from those two lenses and create a 3D photo. We build a depth map, as you can see here in the middle. So the depth map, the black regions of this image are the closest to you, and the white regions of this image are farthest away. From the depth map, we can use computational photography algorithms to build a 3D mesh. Then we can take the original RGB image, layer it on as a texture, light up your phone's motion sensor, and you get an experience that the realness of which eclipses a traditional photo. I'm really hungry now. So 360 photos and 360 videos, those are great ways to consume events. But what about interacting with it? What if you want to build an application-style experience where it's non-linear? That's where React 360 comes in. React 360 allows you to work across devices. It's open source, and it allows you to use JavaScript. And if you're familiar with React and React Native, it's an easy way to get started. It's different from other JavaScript frameworks like Mozilla's A-Frame or Microsoft's Babylon because it focuses on interactive 360 media, which is great for virtual tours or product demos or news stories. Here's one such example. This is the National Gallery in London. So it's relatively inexpensive to go in and capture these stunning high-resolution photography of the museum. You can walk around and go to a place that's on the other side of the world. But not just that, you can interact with it. You can click on the artwork, and you can learn more about it. These information panels pop up with more information about the artwork and exhibits. This was really easy to do, and it helps them tell a more effective story, and it gives people around the world access to an experience they might not otherwise get to have. And so this lights up across a lot of different industries and use cases, whether it's travel and real estate, wanting you to have a more interactive 360 listing, or an advertiser trying to create a differentiated campaign, or a news outlet telling an interactive, in-depth story. So one great example partner that we worked with recently was Nissan. They wanted to give millions of people the opportunity to test drive something that you normally can't test drive at a dealership. So let's take a look at their experience with React 360 told in their own words.
A quiet city street. Or is it?
You never get to test drive cars in dangerous situations like the one you just saw, which kind of makes sense. It's simply too dangerous. So even though cars and safety technologies have evolved, we still try them out much as we always have. Introducing Tech Drive, the only way to safely test Nissan's advanced safety features, because it takes place entirely in virtual reality.
Let's pick the right spot for our tech drive.
In this series of films, you'll feel the shock of almost hitting a pedestrian, the sudden scare of a freeway sideswiping, the stress of congested city driving, the jarring upset of backing into something you didn't see, and the relief when technology steps in to save you.
Now, as you drive, the Ultima scans its environment, looking out for people like our skater friend here.
By putting you into dangerous driving situations virtually, Tech Drive can go where conventional test drives and traditional formats can't. To make that possible, we built a custom camera rig that allowed us to put people right into the action, not only outside the car, but inside as well, letting you get a feel for these technologies as realistically as possible, in new ways and from new places, like a first ever interactive 360 experience delivered right to the Facebook feeds of millions. From the comfort of couches in front of thousands of consoles. And of course, in VR headsets, at hundreds of dealerships and events across North America. You know, places you'd normally go for a test drive. Tech Drive is the safest way to take a test drive into danger, and the coolest way to experience how Nissan technologies can save the day. It's also proof of just how essential these features have become, because once you've felt, not just seen how they work, it's hard to imagine a world without them.
I love technology.
So as you can tell, React 360 enabled Nissan to tell a more effective story about their products in ways that other technology can't. And of course, React 360 is not the only media experience that has an experience that's both in headset and outside of headset. We want your 360 photos, your 3D photos, all of those things to take place in VR as well. One of the most popular ways that people experience media in VR is actually through the web browser. Oculus Browser is the default browser that we build for Oculus headsets. And it's not just any browser, it's tailor-made for VR. It's been about 2 years since we launched Oculus Browser. And so coming soon, we're going to evolve the user experience, the overall look and feel, as you can see here. It'll be more comfortable and more intuitive. And under the hood, Oculus Browser is powered by Chromium. So you know it supports the latest web standards, performance, and developer tools. It's optimized for our hardware. So when we add 6 degrees of freedom for Quest, you get that right in Oculus Browser. And we build our own browsers so that we can advance web standards like WebXR and WebGL and take it forward to an even better experience. And of course, VR media is an essential part of the web, and so we want that experience to look great. Our large amount of investment on the web and VR makes a lot of sense, because the web has been at the forefront of just about every new device that's come about. The dot-com boom fueled PCs in every workplace and home, or you probably browse the web on your phone every day. There are even laptops and tablets that run operating systems that only have a browser. Or if you stream media apps or use a smart TV, a lot of those are actually powered by the web under the hood. So it's not surprising that the web is going to play a crucial role for VR. So if you're a developer, you might think of Unity or Unreal as the right way to get started. And those are awesome for building games and great experiences in the Oculus Store. But it's quite surprising how big of a deal the web is as a platform for VR. In fact, if you look at the monthly active users of Oculus Go, over 2/3 of them are also active users of Oculus Browser, which is incredible. And they're not just browsing web pages and getting out really quickly. They're spending a lot of time. And that makes sense because there's a near infinite amount of content on the web that's available to you. And you get that as your portal to that content in VR. You're checking email, you're browsing Facebook, Reddit, watching videos on YouTube, checking the latest news, or maybe you're even researching what the next VR app that you're going to install is. Of course, You don't just want the web to look like it does on other devices and just be in front of you in VR. You want it to take advantage of that new shiny hardware you bought. You want it to take over your full field of view. And people are doing that with WebVR and WebXR. There is a lot of time being spent in WebXR content already today in Oculus Browser that takes over your full field of view. And that's pretty surprising given how new this technology actually is. One of the ways that we're making that happen is we're actually building WebXR into Facebook.com. Facebook.com, being one of the largest websites on the planet, makes them one of the largest websites that uses WebXR, which is super cool. That's how committed we are to this technology. All your 360 photos, 360 videos, 3D photos, those all come to life via WebXR in Oculus Browser. And this takes advantage of one of the strongest superpowers of the web, which is progressive enhancement. The web runs across so many devices, and progressive enhancement just means the same content's able to take advantage of the unique characteristics of those devices. So this same 3D photo looks good on your phone. We use your motion sensor to give you a great experience. But it looks better on an Oculus Go when you have 3 degrees of freedom that you can look around the scene. But it looks the best on an Oculus Rift or a Quest with 6 degrees of freedom, where you can actually walk around in room scale and experience this immersive media. And most of all, we're just really excited that you get to bring a ton of immersive content that you and your friends created and share on Facebook. Of course, the web's much bigger than Facebook. The web is huge. And if you remember when mobile phones came about, there was this problem of trying to find mobile-optimized websites. It just wasn't there quite yet. And while all websites work great in Oculus Browser and VR, we want to help you find those VR-enabled ones that take over your full field of view and take advantage of your hardware. And yet there's no search engine for the VR web. Which is why, starting today, we're making it easier to discover this content right in headset. We've redesigned the new tab page of the Oculus Browser. So anytime you create a new tab in Oculus Browser, you'll get a screen that looks like this, where we're helping you find awesome content to experience from the web. Right up top, there's shortcuts to some of the most popular websites on the web. Next, we're curating and featuring recommended WebVR experiences that were created by developers like you. Up next, we'll show you popular immersive media from Facebook. You can discover new creators to follow or new communities to join. And if you link your Facebook account to Oculus, we'll personalize this page. And you'll see photos and videos that are immersive from you and your friends and pages you follow right on the new tab page of Oculus Browser. And up top, there's convenient category filters if you want to jump into the types of experiences that you enjoy the most. Of course, the new tab page isn't just about helping users find awesome content from the web. It's also one of the ways that we're helping you as a developer get your content discovered. Which is why, starting today, you can actually submit your WebVR experiences to be featured in this page. So if you're a WebVR developer, you can go to fb.me/submitwebxr, tell us a little bit about your experience and the URL, how to get in touch with you, and we'll pick some of the best experiences that we think will be great for our users. I'll have this URL again at the end. Of course, as developers start to take advantage of this, where they're building for both 2D and VR, a new problem actually starts to present itself. If I see a cool piece of VR-ready content outside of headset on, say, Facebook, how do I get that into my headset later to enjoy? When you're in VR, you take over your full field of view by clicking on the View in VR button. But what if when you're not in VR, you had a button like Save to VR? Save to VR is a new feature that we're rolling out today that makes it easy to get VR content from your phone into your headset. If you link your Facebook account to Oculus, all you have to do is hit Save from the Post menu, and then put on your headset. Once you're in headset, you'll find all the saved content from Facebook right in your Oculus library. And you can click on one of these tiles and be taken into the WebVR experience in Oculus Browser, right on Facebook.com. And the Facebook app's not the only place that you can actually save content from your phone to look at later in your headset. We're also making all of the great WebVR content that we feature in the new tab page of Oculus Browser available in the Oculus Companion app on your phone. So you can browse on the bus and find cool WebVR experiences to enjoy later, and just hit save. And it'll be right there waiting for you when you put on your headset. So that's some of the ways that we're making the VR web a better experience both inside and outside of a headset. Let's take a look at some of the innovations that we're working on in this space to push this technology even further. I mentioned WebXR. The story actually starts at WebVR. WebVR was one of the earliest API proposals for how to build websites that take advantage of your full hardware. And most of the experiences you'll see on the web today are actually powered by WebVR. WebXR is the newest generation of that. It's an evolution that actually we believe will be forward compatible for both VR and AR devices. We already support an experimental version of this in Oculus Browser. And if you're a developer and want to get started, you can actually flip it on in About Flags. This is still evolving, so expect changes as we innovate. One of those innovations that we're trying to work on is what we call time warp layers. To explain how time warp layers work, let's look at a basic game loop. So a VR headset will capture the head pose. And if you're running in JavaScript, then request animation frame kicks in. And your code runs on the CPU. And then next, the GPU renders the next frame. And then the compositor distorts that frame correctly for the lenses. And if you do this right, this happens at a high frame rate, and you have an awesome experience. But if you take too long to render, you'll drop a frame. Now, if that's a phone or a computer or a TV, dropping frames isn't great, but it's tolerable to a certain amount. In VR, dropping a frame means re-rendering the previous frame exactly as it was before, which means the world doesn't keep up with your head if it moves since the last frame. And that can be jarring or even cause discomfort, but it definitely breaks the immersive effect. And so we use asynchronous time warp layers, asynchronous time warp, to correct for this. So what we do is we have the compositor actually sample the head's orientation right before it's about to commit the frame, and then translate the image. So the world stays up with your latest head pose, and you don't break that immersion, and you avoid discomfort. Now, when you're building in VR, you often are composing the scene of what is effectively a bunch of different layers. If the compositor actually understood these layers, like say this cylinder that might be that interactive text overlay in the National Gallery Museum, you compose those types of things with other things in your scene. And if the compositor was able to actually sample these layers independently, it could use that in the time warp process to provide a breakthrough in clarity of text and graphics that have edges. We already use this in a number of first-party applications in Oculus, and we're trying to bring that same technology to the web. And so we have some various proposals that we're working on through the W3C, and we hope to see that come to the web soon. Performance is another area that's absolutely critical for VR. And of course, VR has two lenses. And so when you're rendering a scene, you actually have to render the left eye and the right eye, even if these two images are nearly identical. But with traditional stock WebGL that's available to websites today, your only option is to just do those sequentially. And so you have double the application and driver overhead, which can reduce your frame rate. So multi-view is a GPU extension that actually allows you to render both of those images in parallel on the hardware. And if you have a CPU-bound experience, that can actually improve your performance by 25 to 50%. There's a number of websites actually already taking advantage of this today. And that's because it's on by default in Oculus Browser. We're one of the first browsers to support this. It's also an experimental API. So if you're going to go ahead and use it and be an early adopter, you should feature detect it. It's prefixed as OVR on Oculus Browser. You should feature detect and provide future proofing for the eventual finalized standard. So if you're coding to WebXR or WebGL, those are closest to the metal and give you access to some of these great innovations. But it's not always the most developer-friendly way to get started, especially if you're trying to move fast and build things. JavaScript frameworks are what makes it easier and are a part of everyday life as a web developer. There are awesome, great frameworks to get started, like Mozilla's A-Frame, Microsoft's Babylon, or Facebook's React 360. And they all work great in Oculus Browser. But I just want to cement how easy it really is to get started developing for VR using something like React 360. So let's build something right now. You can get started with React 360 because it's open source right on GitHub. Or if you go over to the command line, you can install the React 360 CLI from npm. If you're familiar with React Native, this is very similar. You can use React 360 right from the command line to initialize a new project. So while watching me install React 360 CLI from npm is not the most exciting demo, what is exciting is how quickly, in just a few minutes, we're going to have a VR-enabled experience that works in a headset, that works on a phone, it works on a computer, and you don't have to think about all the unique characteristics of those devices. So I'm installing the CLI, I'm initializing a new project, and then once that new project gets installed and initialized, I will start npm. That will run a web server right on the machine, and we'll flip over to the browser. There we go. We'll flip over to the browser, head over to localhost, refresh the page. And there you go. This is a 360 experience that already works. You can move it around with your mouse and your laptop. If you put this in a headset, you can move your head around, and it automatically handles all that for you. It's rendering at a high frame rate. We've even figured out how to render text. If you were to try to do this in WebXR and WebGL directly, this simple Hello World project could take a day or more. So, all right, that image is boring. Let's make this real, right? So, 360 photos, I mentioned, are really easy to take. So if I just save a 360 photo from my phone and put it in the project directory, I can go change one line of code, and now all of a sudden I'll be rendering that 360 image. So we'll go back into our code. And we'll go down here, change out this image for the default one that's included in the project, swap it out for the one that I took on my phone. All we have to do is restart npm, and we'll go back over to the browser. And you didn't have to think about the complexities of the formats of how 360 images are captured or stored or handle things like that. It just was rendered for you. And here's the stunning high-resolution photo that I could take right with my phone. It's as easy as that. Of course, working across devices, one of the most challenging subjects is input. And we're making that easy for you, too. So we provide a built-in component, like the VR button, that automatically handles input across different devices, whether it's a click from a mouse or a tap on a touchscreen, or a button press from a gamepad, or VR-tracked controllers like Oculus Touch. So let's add this button to the code, and we'll make it cycle through a photo gallery of different 360 photos. This could just as easily be a virtual tour taking you to different rooms of the museum. So I add the VR button to my view. It's got an on-click handler that, again, handles across different devices. I'm going to add some state to the component. This is just an array of a bunch of different 360 photos that I stored in the project directory. And then I'll add a next photo method that just cycles through that array and calls the set background image method to change the environment. That's it. We'll refresh the page. And there we go. We have a button controller right in the view. And when I click it, there's these nice seamless transitions between 360 images. Very little code. You'll also notice that this is actually rendered in 3D in the scene. This is what allows you to place those panels and things like that you saw in the museum experience. Finally, I'm going to add some sound. I bring this up because adding sound to VR experience is one of the things that can really increase your immersion level. And it also is a great example for this talk because it shows how React 360 is leveraging technology from React Native. The audio module we're using here is actually just a native module. So let's add some sound. I'll import native modules. I'm also going to use an asset helper here to load the sound. And then some browsers won't autoplay audio. unless the user interacts with the page. So we're going to trigger this sound when you click that next photo button. I'll just call play environmental with the path to the audio file. Flip back over to the web page, refresh, and when I click change photo, I have rich immersive sound right in the scene, and it really takes the level of immersion up to another level. Of course, that was just what we call omnipresent sound. It's just playing through your headphones and you look around. React 360 can take this to a whole nother level by doing 3D positional audio that makes sounds seem like it's coming from certain locations in the scene. And that's just one of the ways that you can go farther than what I'm showing here today. You can start to embed 360 video or GLTF graphic objects. You can create hotspots and all kinds of awesome experiences that we don't have time for here today. So in a minute, I'm actually going to take some Q&A. So if you do have a question, this is a good time if you want to stand. There are 2 microphones on the left and right here. So to recap, Facebook.com is the place that we are making WebXR a reality for the web and providing immersive media experiences that work across devices. We're building features like Save to VR that connect your phone with your headset. And the Oculus Browser new tab page is your portal to get to discovering new content, as well as your way as a developer to get your content discovered. And we build our own browser so that we can advance this technology and really usher in that next generation of the web. And if you're a developer and you want to get started, frameworks like React 360 are an easy way to get started that works across all different types of devices. So thank you. Please make sure you take a survey. We want to make sure these are great every year for you. If you're a web developer and you have content that you already want to get featured today, this is where to get started. And if you're interested in experiencing this stuff hands-on, well, heads-on with a headset, I guess, you can head over to the developer resources section. And we have a booth there with demos that can show off Save to VR, the new tab page, as well as a bunch of these partner experiences built on WebVR. So thank you very much. We'll go to questions.
Hey, so I've built a business tool for prototyping VR design using WebXR. So design in 2D and then see how it looks inside of VR. So it works great in the Oculus Go browser, but that means they have to type in a very long, complicated URL string or short URL to try and get that to come up. And when you're trying to rapidly prototype, launching the Oculus browser, refreshing the page, and all of that's not a great experience. So I set out to build a native Unity, at least, app on the Oculus Go. None of the browser support inside of the Oculus SDK, though, allows for WebVR to actually run in my app. So it only runs inside the Oculus browser. Is there any way that my dreams can come true?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. So first, we want to be able to move more and more web content into apps as well and bridge that divide. One way that we've already started doing that is through web views. But as you said, like web views today are only for 2D flat content. But a great example of that is actually in Oculus TV. Oculus TV actually uses some of the media channels that you can go to on Oculus TV are actually web apps. So it's like one of the ways that we're starting. We also have the ability to deep link from a native app into the browser. We'd like to get there with VR activities directly from a Unity application. We don't have any plans to announce today, but that's something we're definitely looking at. There's some unique challenges from a performance and memory management perspective that we need to tackle.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Hi. My question is on the save to VR.
Yeah.
Like I know how it is with saving to the collections, like even just in Facebook Spaces, I'm thinking. Is there going to be a way to organize it so it's not just all of these saves? Because that's what's happened to me in VR, where it's just a bunch of saves and I can't search for it.
Yeah, totally. I think like today we're rolling out the initial ability just to save from Facebook, but we've built it on top of the Facebook save infrastructure with this goal in mind of you being able to collect and organize things. On Facebook, you can still use collections for anything that you save for VR. So you can organize them on Facebook. The library today doesn't provide a view into those collections. It's all one list. But as users collect and save more things, that's something that we'll tackle when we hear feedback from users.
Hi, how are you? My question is involving the 360 image. So how are you taking a solid 360 image through your phone, for example? Like, are there specific megapixel requirements? Is there specific size effects that you need, or is it multiple images like wrapped around?
Yeah, so good question. So there are a number of different apps that can allow you to actually take a 360 photo, and then they get stitched together. So like the common user experience of that, right, is that you take your phone and you move it around like this, and then there's a processing step afterwards that it saves it, and then it actually outputs that into a single JPEG that has a projection format, so that it's warped, so that when you put it in headset, it actually gets stretched around and looks natural and correct. There's a lot of different formats, and so that's one of the things that like React 360 helps paper over and make a little easier. But the easiest way to do it is just to use like one of those apps and save it out, and you can use the JPEG just like I did in the demo. Obviously, like the higher the resolution, the better the quality experience, and I would say that's something to just try out for yourself. Yeah, and there are trade-offs between bandwidth and quality. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Hi. Sorry.
Just making sure there's no line over there.
Is there a specific sound format to capture 360 audio?
Yeah, so it's the audio module from React Native, so it supports a number of different formats. If you go over to GitHub, there's documentation on the different codecs and things that are supported, but generally you'll find several different formats. All the industry standards that you're used to on the web work here in React 360.
Hi, I got a question. Can you guys do 6 degrees of freedom content?
Yes.
So it does support like OBJs and things like that. You can import 3D objects and things for people to like just walk around immersively.
Yeah.
So I didn't see you only showed 2D images, not anything 3D. Just curious, what can you import?
For sure. There's a lot of different frameworks that are great for taking advantage of six degrees of freedom. There's some good experiences in the Oculus new browser tab page, and we have some of those over at the developer resources section where you can try it out. So a good one's like, for example, Mozilla Hubs. That was built, I believe, using A-Frame, and it takes advantage of 6 degrees of freedom and both of the Oculus Touch controllers. So you can actually walk around a shared space with other people, talk using WebRTC and real-time chat. You can pick up a marker and draw it. You can throw things at people, and it's that full room scale experience right in the browser.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll tell you what, I will step off to the side here and we'll take some more questions, but I appreciate your time. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your conference.